Is that it? That was the thing.
That's
The
it.
thing. That's what
That
we're
was the
doing.
thing.
That was the thing.
That's
That
as
was the
good
thing I was
as I
supposed
can
to be
make
looking
it.
for. All right, that's the thing. Technical issues, and if
Oh
you're
my
not watching us on
god!
YouTube, then just take
Thank
take
your
your.
lucky stars.
That's
Yeah.
just not a good day to be on YouTube.
Oh crap! Hold on. You know we didn't even start Audacity, did we?
Nope, we didn't do anything.
Nope, we didn't do that.
Do
That's
nothing.
we really need to do that.
Okay, I mean, at some point we have to start the Audacity. Should
Audacity would be a good thing to start.
All right, so this is not part of the video at all. Then we're gonna cut all
Oh
this
no,
out.
this is part of this. This is all we have. I can't edit this video after the fact.
Yeah, you can download it, can't you?
Download it and re-upload it.
Well, I'm just saying.
Who cares, man? People enjoy the behind-the-scenes stuff. They're more popular than the finished video anyway. So
That
that
can't be true.
it absolutely is. But Audacity will be the actual official thing release. So
That's the actual podcast. So if you
yeah.
guys ever want to know how this thing starts, it starts with me and Rob arguing with each other. And
No, well,
generally
not
me-
usually like that. This is
You're a little exasperated. You're as
very.
angry as a Canadian gets right now. You're quite peeved.
Yes. But let's start our Audacity recording.
All right, ready?
Yeah, okay. 1, 2, 3.
Wait,
Record.
don't I say it?
What?
Because
No,
I say it.
No, I'm still hosting the feed.
What is that got to do with the price of tea in China? We're not doing the video anymore. The video's this.
Okay,
So
who
I
cares?
do
It
the
doesn't matter
Audacity.
then who says 1, 2,
That's
3.
what I'm saying, but I should say it because I'm the one
Okay.
editing. Okay.
All right.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Record. Oh shoot! I'm not recording. Stop.
I don't even know what my video is showing right now because I can't see anything.
I
on my
can't.
screen.
I'm not looking
I
at
do
you. I'm
everything
looking
on
at
my
Audacity.
laptop.
This
Oh,
is
you know
it.
what? I didn't even there. Now people can see me. Holy crow! This is the worst ever. This is going to be our video this week too. We're not going to have
And
a
this
polished
is very
video
professional.
Oh,
This is as professional as
best
it gets right here.
episode ever. 543 episodes in. Why wouldn't we know what we're doing by now? All right, Audacity. We got to start the record.
Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Record.
All right.
Ready?
1, 2, 3. Pop.
Pop. All right. There
I
we
didn't
go.
even. What? You can't even see the pop on my waveform. Oh, whatever. Okay, Audacity's recording.
I'll fix that. I can fix that.
Yes.
Don't worry
Great.
about that
It's a
part.
good thing you didn't even say welcome to AV Rant because now we can do it in the Audacity recording. And you can cut out this part at the beginning of the Audacity. But the video shall live on in perpetuity. Hooray.
Hurrah. All right. Calm yourself.
Uh-huh.
Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with...
Rob H, this is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Okay, how do we handle this now? Okay, audio only people, it's going to seem like a normal podcast. Video people watching on YouTube, this is the worst video we've ever done. It's going to just be the Google feed. I can't get Manycam to work on my desktop computer because I, like a fool, like a damn fool,
You should know better. We should
Windows
all
update.
know better by now.
I did the Windows update, and long ago, when the past Windows update that broke every webcam in existence except for Microsoft branded webcams, so I went out and got a Microsoft branded webcam. Like a fool, thought maybe it'll work in Windows 10 after an update. No, of course. Well, I get an image, I just can't record that image in any of the software I have for recording video. So I'm on my laptop. It's up to our Google Hangout feed to record the video for this week. I'm going to attempt to put up pictures in a horrible looking screen sharing thing in the only program in Windows that Google Hangouts will show during a screen capture. No,
Picked a
It's
bad
over,
week
man.
to give up glue.
over. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't. Is this audio recording? Is audio recording better work out?
I mean, it's fine so far as I could tell. If not,
Welcome
we'll
to
just
AV
strip it
Rant.
from
We
the YouTube
answered
video.
questions about home theater and AV, not about computers. I don't know crap about computers, apparently.
We should know better than to update them. Because
I know.
that's the source
I
of everybody's problems. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com.
Oh yeah, wait, hold on. I'm supposed to put up a picture there.
What?
Yeah.
I'm not holding on.
So that people can see. Well, I gotta. Why? Thank you, Google Hangouts. Okay, how about 17 button presses to do that? There you go. Isn't that amazing? 17 button
No
presses
one that's
to get
listening to this
there.
can hear what you can see what you're saying. They're all going to go to YouTube now to see the train wreck that is this podcast.
Fantastic.
Go to
Awesome quality.
www.avrant.com. You can leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast. YouTube.com/C/AVRant/AVRant number 534.
543.
543
Mhm.
/Trainwreck, which will be the name of this podcast.
It is, man. We had something that was going to obviously be like a great title. I'm sorry. My show notes are somewhere. Anyway, I'm sorry to that person. This is now just called Trainwreck because it is.
It's going to be Trainwreck. If you're looking for this specific one, but you just leave a comment over there. We'll sometimes see those. Better to email us directly, though, if you want to know. Get your question answered. That's question@avrant.com. If you want to email Rob and send him your condolences over the fact that Windows has made his life a living hell, it's rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. My email is tom@avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. Our producer, his name is Austin. Austin does all of our videos except for this week. He couldn't get it off this week, I guess.
Yeah.
You can see Austin he's got his own Twitter feed @AustinTEMPond, and his podcast is the We Watch Movies podcast. You can check that out where they talk about all things related to Windows updates. We should have actually talked to him before we did this. Because his
very short podcast, don't do them.
Yeah,
Thank you, Austin.
It's been 7,500 episodes of just don't. And like every once in a while, they're like after the update's been out for a while and everything's been fixed, then they'll say, "Okay, go." That's the podcast. Every week you just check in. Do I do it yet? Nope. And then that's the podcast. You should have checked it. It would have said nope. All right, let's get right into this. Our listeners of the week. First of all, we want to thank David, Chris, and Tate. David, Chris, and Tate went to www.avrant.com to support the podcast. They did that by clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. That there they could leave us a PayPal donation with either their PayPal account or by putting their credit card information, which PayPal takes care of. We never see any of that. Those monies go to help support the podcast and hosting fees. Eventually someday, I mean, every once in a while it gets us stuff. Like it may be buying a new program for Rob. To people ask me like, Tom, you should tell people what it is that you spend that money on. Well, I mean, it's 10 years of this podcast. We only recently started getting donations in the last couple of years, and we've got hosting fees for 7+ years that have never been covered by anybody other than me. So where does that go? Well, right now it's trying to get us out of the red. I thought we were out of the red. My wife just laughed when I told her that. So no, but occasionally it does do things like, when we need equipment, we'll spend a little bit of that there. Because my wife doesn't really care. It's not like she's she's totally keeping a running tab, but it's not like she lords it over me. So if I say, oh yeah, AV Rant bought this for the podcast, she sometimes will raise an eyebrow, but that's about as bad as it gets. So that's mostly what, hopefully it would be great someday if this podcast got to the point where it was financially self-sufficient completely. Right now, if we just erased all that debt, we would probably be okay with our hosting fees, and that's about it. But I'd have to actually look up to see what all the things we pay for, to be honest with you, on a monthly basis. Then, but beyond that, it would not really cover much else. So we would have to I would like us to be able to buy gear every once in a while just for us to test out. Or, how great it would be if AV Rant went to CES, or better yet, CEDIA, because CEDIA actually has stuff that I care about. CES is mostly just people talking up their new.
Please don't promise doing that. That's
it's never going to happen. I mean, AV Rant would have
for me. You might be able to go though.
Oh yeah, but maybe me and Austin could do it. Austin, me, I forget. Anyways,
and me.
Thank you, David, Chris, and Tate for supporting the podcast.
Yeah, David, Chris, Tate, thank you very much for those donations.
If you can't support the podcast monetarily, you can do things like Monty and Mark did. They went and they talked us up. Started to talk us up to different manufacturers. Monty bought an Oppo UDP203 and let Oppo know it was us that nudged him into making the purchase. Sounds like us. We often nudge. Mark's theater was featured on SVS's Featured Systems blog, and he mentions us in the answers to the interview questions. So This is the guy who had the room that had the skylight, and he was thinking of making a bass trap, and Rob said vapor barrier, and basically, we helped out with that a little bit. So his room looks very nice, and it's a very small room, but he did a good job with it. So good job, Mark. Thank you, Mark and Monty.
Yeah. Mark, Monty, sorry, I'm fiddling with stuff over here, trying to do the screen share. I know. But Mark, Monty, thank you both very much. Congratulations, Monty, on your UDP 203 purchase. I'm sure you will love it. And Mark has actually moved, so that room isn't even the room he's in anymore, but it's still very cool to have it featured and have AV Rant mentioned over at SVS. SVS nearly gave me a heart attack today because I went to go check some prices, and all it said was find a dealer. So I tweeted them, and they're like, oh yeah, if you're outside the US, basically all of their international dealers asked them to not put the price on the website because the US price is what shows up, and people were getting confused and being like, how come the price is higher? Because local currency. So now when I go there from Canada, I don't see the prices. So that's going to be a whole workaround thing, but they're aware of it. They're actually going to try and fix that so you can choose what you see.
There you go. All right, let's look in the news here. What we got going on? Moani and Antoine both let us know that hot on the heels of their $2,000 and $2,500 4K DLP projector announcement, Optima has announced a $5,000 laser phosphor version and a 5,000 lumen. I don't know, that's different than dollars. Lumen lamp-based version, priced at $7,000. So there's a $7,000 lamp-based version that's 5,000 lumens, and then there's a laser one that's $5,000. But we don't know how many lumens that one is. Is that why it's not listed here?
Oh, I think they said it was 2,800. It was fairly bright for a laser based. So yeah, that's the two blue lasers. One of the blue lasers is blue, and the other blue laser fires into a yellow phosphor to create yellow, which is then separated into red and green, and that's how you get your red, green, blue. So
there you go.
That's what's going on there. But pretty cool, yeah. $5,000 for 4K. I mean, it's like the half 4K DLP chip that's being wobbled, but that's full resolution, 4K resolution, HDR10 compatible. So it's got all the kind of check boxes there with a laser light engine.
Yeah,
could be worth checking out.
True 4K. All right, we got a lot of stuff from Denon and Marantz, so hold on to your little seats here because it's going to take me a while to read through. Denon and Marantz held their European product lineup event once again, and while AV Forums in the UK claimed some very exciting news, the images of the back panels captured by France's AV Caesar?
Yeah.
Is that a different person or different? Is that a guy?
I mean, that's Caesar? Their website.
Oh, that's the website.
AV
Okay,
Caesar,
I never heard that.
So.
They contradict what the AV Forums reported. So how would we know for sure? Because it's a little confusing out there. So for what we know for sure is everything is getting HEOS built in. And everything supports HDR10 out of the box with a promised fall firmware update to add Dolby Vision HLG support, pass-through support.
Yeah.
HLG.
I'm a little surprised Dolby Vision isn't out of the box. And a fall update is kind of far away.
Yeah. So every model also works with the Odyssey app, so that's good. Let's look at Marantz first. There's an entry-level Slimline NR1508 5.1 channel model. Then there's Slimline NR1608 gets the new 32-bit DAC and can do 5.2.2, and both use Odyssey Multi-EQ. That's pretty good. The full-size SR5012 gets Odyssey Multi-QXT, a full set of 7.1 pre-outs and 7.1 analog inputs, which is unusual. This is Marantz? No, this is Marantz.
That is Marantz.
That explains that. And a future firmware update is supposed to add EARC.
Yeah.
EARC, what's EARC?
Enhanced ARC. Enhanced Audio Return Channel.
That's a thing?
That's a thing. That was one of the features mentioned in the HDMI 2.1 spec thingy. But it doesn't require extra bandwidth, so here it is in an HDMI 2.0B port.
All right. Yeah. So when TVs with EARC ports come out, they'll be able to send or pass through full lossless audio to and from the TV and the receiver back and forth, I guess, is the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess...
How is that even helpful? So if you get your... What? Well,
hopefully some streaming services or something at some point will start using lossless audio, at which point you'll be able to get it out of the audio return channel if your TV supports such a thing.
Okay. So if you're using like the Roku 15 and it gets true lossless audio somehow magically, and it can then send it from the app that's inside your TV out the HDMI cable into the receiver through
Correct. Yeah. The idea so think of audio return channel right now, which is what a lot of people use for their streaming apps. But right now it's limited to vanilla Dolby Digital. Some can do Dolby Digital Plus and vanilla DTS, but you couldn't do Dolby True HD. You couldn't do DTS HD Master Audio. So with enhanced audio return channel, you can do those lossless formats. Plus, their Atmos and DTS-X metadata on top of those lossless formats variants. So all of that is possible to now send out of your TV via its HDMI port, as long as it has enhanced audio return channel, and these AV receivers will support
I would like
that.
everybody to take a great big breath and hold it until that works. Because that's even
until there's any actual content that makes use of that. Yeah.
I can't imagine a situation where this is going to be anything other than, well, now it's just barely better than it was before. I mean, it's just
This brings up a really interesting question, though. Well, it doesn't matter, because any AV receiver that has enhanced audio return channel will also probably support Dolby Vision pass-through, at least at some point. I was thinking, like, maybe you take a source that sends out Dolby Vision, you plug it directly into the TV, and then the TV is able to pass along the audio in case your AV receiver can't pass the Dolby Vision. But anything that supports enhanced ARC is going to support Dolby Vision, so what is it? I don't know. I don't know.
See a real use for this.
Who cares? They wanted another sticker. This is a new sticker.
A bunch of too little, too late. That ARC was hamstrung from the very beginning, and they should have fixed it a long time ago so they could pass whatever. It's very silly, but whatever. Okay, so the SR6012 has 9 amps built in, 11 channel processing. So you can, if you add an extra 2 channels, you can get 11. All the previous goodies, including Hios this year, plus Odyssey Multi-Q XC32 with Sub-EQ HT and the Odyssey app, and along with Dolby Vision HLG. I'm never going to get that right. Why is it HGTV, right? That's what's screwing me up. HLG update in the fall. It will also get ARC support, which nobody will ever talk about or need. AV Forms mistype that has 13.2 pre-outs, but AV Caesar's picture on the back panel shows just 11.2, just like the 6011.
Yeah.
The SR7012 and the AV7704 Pre-Pro now come with Oro 3D already active, no additional charge.
That's kind of all you get.
That's very exciting.
that and a front panel display, because the 6012 still has the little porthole and nothing else.
Very exciting. All right, on the Denon side, it's the new X series. We already had the launch of the X 1400H and the X 2400H, which is our entry level, of course, because the numbers. The X 3400H gets interesting with Odyssey Multi-Q XC32 with Sub EQ HT and the EARC update for absolutely nobody, and a full set of 7.1 pre-outs plus 3 HDMI outputs this year. 3. I actually think that's pretty useful, because depending on how they operate, is it going to be audio, like full range? One can be just audio and one can be
no, it's the whole 2 of them are mirrored and one of them is zone 2 HDMI output. So in the X3300, you only had a main zone and a zone 2.
Right.
Didn't have a mirrored output in the X3300. Now you have both.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's something at least. And with all the stuff that's coming out, and when you're in the transition year, where like people are going to be transitioning because of Atmos and Dolby Vision and all that stuff, 4K TVs coming out, having a couple extra HDMI outputs in the back is not necessarily a bad thing. The X4400H once again has 9 amps built in, 11 channel processing, but now has Oro 3D is included out of the box. That's the big update there, I guess. X6400H is 11 amps built in and Oro 3D, but this is where AV Forums apparently led people astray. They claimed it could do 13 channel processing, which means 9.2.4 or 7.2.6. But on one look at the back panel shows that there are only 11.2 pre-outs. The confusion is most likely due to Jen and Marantz both mentioning but not showing new flagship models that are expected to have a spring 2018 release. Those models will supposedly have 13 channel processing and are strongly rumored to be waiting for HDMI 2.1 chipsets as well. So they'll be right there at the very top of the cutting edge of things that people will be.
Assuming what we saw on the Marantz UK website seems like ages ago at this point, but saying that models like the 6011 and 7011 and AV 7703 Pre-Pro will be getting a Dolby Vision update, with I guess this fall.
So you think the 11s and the 12s are all going to be getting it at the same time, is what you're suggesting?
I mean, if that's to be believed, I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll turn out that even the 6011 and 7011 don't end up getting the update for some weird reason at this point, because like North America has been saying, but until we put it on our website, nothing's official. Yeah, we really don't know. I mean, this seems if they somehow didn't put out a Dolby Vision pass-through update on the 6012 and the 7012 and these new X3400, 4400 models from Denon, I mean, that would look really bad because they've made that explicit and put that out there in their own release. So, but other than that, it's like, what do you? They got a new, different 32-bit DAC, but it's not really like okay, like whoop-de-doo.
Who cares?
It's a different DAC, but probably doesn't make any audible difference whatsoever. So outside of that, no real feature changes. I mean, you get the Oro 3D without having to pay the $200 upgrade. So for Oro 3D fans, that's a nice.
Both of them.
That's a nice thing. But other than that, really not much in the way of changes. And when we saw the report from AV Forums, it was like, oh, big changes, like, you know, the 6400 is going to do 13-channel processing. So he said, and defended later on. He's like, that's what Denon told me directly. He was like, but look at the back panel. How can you do 13 if you don't have 13 pre-outs? They just physically don't exist. So where would the sound come from? Yeah. It's a bit of an odd thing.
Oh, we'll see. Yeah. Klipsch has added 3 in-wall and 2 in-ceiling speaker models to its mid-range reference Premiere series. So we're looking for in-wall Klipsch speakers and Klipsch Atmos speakers, I guess, what the in-ceiling ones would be good for.
Now, you sent this news to me, so I included it, and I don't really know why it was.
Why did I do that? Yeah. I sent this to you?
You did, via email.
That doesn't sound like me.
It came from your email address. I don't know. Maybe
I think I meant to send the SVS one.
Oh.
Did I send that to you?
No, it showed up on Facebook today, so I was going to mention it next
week.
I
got it like last week. Yeah, okay. So elevation speakers have now got a ceiling mount. You kind of slide them on there. So
I don't have a picture for that now. I'm not prepared.
I'm sorry. I said that. But Klipsch, people who like Klipsch would care about this. The in-ceiling speakers are very elite.
The thing that was in the press release that was kind of cool is their little like tab, you know, the dog ear things that you use to attach it. They said they have a new, I guess it's almost like a ratchet system. But so you do it by hand. You don't actually have to use a tool. You like tighten it down by hand, and it automatically stops when it reaches the correct amount of pressure, so that you can't.
Cool.
You can't.
So it's like a torque wrench almost.
Yeah.
Great.
So I was like, okay, that's a potentially useful.
Maybe that's why I sent it. I don't remember. I don't know. I was probably late at night. But it sounds like me. All right, comments from some listeners. Jason wanted to clarify that for the TiVo Romeo OTA, specifically the OTA version, not the regular cable-based TiVos, that there's no ongoing monthly fee. You pay once up front, and that's it. So how much does this thing cost? Like $300 or something like that, right? It's pretty expensive.
I should have looked that up, but I don't recall.
Don't worry, I'll look it up. You got too much stuff going on over there.
I have many windows and only one small laptop.
The thing is with TiVo, and you got to forgive me for this, because I mean, we are going to occasionally say stuff wrong, and believe me, when we do, somebody's going to let us know about it. But they keep changing it. You know, this may not have been changed, but it's $400. By the way, it's $400, and I think that right there is why I couldn't get behind it. And it's not because it's probably not worth it. I think it probably is, especially TiVo's like guide is supposed to be just phenomenal. Like everybody who uses it thinks everything else is like driving a mid-century sedan.
Except that other metadata guide company bought them.
Yeah, so who knows what it's not like now? I don't know, but they change it anyways. It's $400, and I'm too cheap for $400. I just am. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm too cheap.
Dual tuner over the air DVR. That's what it is.
And honestly, I spent like 60 or 40 or whatever it was on this little hop hog thing. Right. I've used it for like the Super Bowl, a little bit of the debates before the election, before I started tearing my hair out and wanted to go cry in the streets for the fate of humanity. And everything. I mean, I think that's about it. I mean, I barely used it. A couple of times the kids were sick and streaming was down.
Right.
I turned that on.
I might have misspoke there. The OTA, right, is 1 terabyte. Is it 4 tuners? 4 tuners or 2 tuners?
Oh, I don't know. I closed it already. All right,
If I
McMansion.
misspoke, I apologize.
All right, McMansion Chris shares Liz's opinion about the Roku Spotify app being crap. I think is what she said. He said terrible. As far as Spotify apps on some other sort of streaming device, the best one he's found is the one on the Amazon Fire TV. So Liz, you're listening, or will more likely tell Liz. So maybe that'd be worth a try. A different Chris emailed in.
I should say the TiVo Romeo OTA 4 tuners.
4 tuners. There we go. Doesn't make any difference. They could have 100 tuners. I wouldn't care.
I corrected myself though. That's what's
$400 is too much money. Chris P. A few episodes back, we had a listener named Jackson who was getting an error message from his Xbox One when he was trying to send lossless audio, and we were like stumped, right? Because I couldn't figure it out, and you couldn't figure it out. Jackson was using a Denon X3300W, and the Xbox would put up a message saying your AV receiver cannot decode this. Chris thinks the problem is HDMI CEC. The receiver is powered on before the Xbox One by a CEC command, say from the TV. Then the HDMI handshake will assume that the TV's audio capabilities will assume the TV's audio capabilities rather than the Xbox. So either don't use CEC, which is always the case, never use CEC. Or if you do, make sure the Xbox is the first thing that gets turned on. And frankly, if you have any sort of Harmony remote or something that has a macros, in order to make sure the Xbox is the first thing on, you should have a delay of like 5 minutes. It is. I love my Xbox.
If you have the instant on thing, it's not so bad.
I don't know, dude. Like half the time, not even. I'm not gonna say that. Most of the time, I press the button, and the Xbox is kind of like in some sort of weird standby mode or insta on mode or whatever it is. And it's fine, but every once in a while, it's not, and it takes forever for it to come up. So just to be safe, it's what you would have to do is make sure that you put a nice long delay on there. Second, Chris says, if you happen to be an Xbox insider and you're getting the preview builds for each update, in his experience, those updates always set the audio back to 7.1 compressed rather than bitstream. So double check your settings. Thank you, Microsoft. You're so sensitive to my needs as a consumer.
They're just right up there right now for me today.
Third, we've had a few people asking about wireless headphones for watching TV and such, including asking for options to turn normal headphones into a wireless setup. Chris just wanted to point out that you can plug any pair of regular headphones into Xbox One controller and get wireless sound that way. Plus, the Xbox One does have an HDMI input, so you can connect other sources to it and play their sound through the wireless controller. With Windows Sonic and the Dolby Atmos for headphones now available, it's a pretty good way to get pseudo surround via headphones as well. Lastly, he knows that we tend to favor Denon and Marantz, but he bought an Onkyo RZ1100 receiver and compared it to the Denon X4300H, and he thought it sounded clearer, particularly in dialogue. He only cares about one seat, so the more limited EQ setup didn't bother him, and he says the Onkyo offers a wider selection of speakers positions, some that Denon doesn't offer. So
I want to address that last part in particular because I mean, I'll just say that isn't true. The Denon X4300, if you were to get the Oro update, offers 3 speaker positions that the Onkyo doesn't, but the X4300 offers all the same speaker positions that the Onkyo does. However, where I could see that coming into play is he does mention, and if we get to his question at the end of the podcast, he's talking about using the Dolby-enabled setting, for the upward firing version.
Yeah.
Now, in the Onkyo, it's easier to get to that because it just says, what do you want to come out of the height 1 outputs, right? And you can say, I want front heights, top fronts, top middles, or Dolby-enabled front speakers, right? It's just all there in a list. Whereas on the Denon or on the Marantz versions, you actually have to say, how many height speakers do I have? 0, and then it will say, oh, you don't have any height speakers? How about Dolby enabled speakers? How many of those do you have? And then you get the option for Dolby enabled. So I think that's where maybe this was coming in, because
no one ever accused Denon of having very good menus. Let's put it that way.
Just factually, all the speaker positions that are, I mean, I read through the manual, so all the speaker positions that are available in this Onkyo are available on the X4300. It's just getting to them is more confusing. That is absolutely true.
And I have to really, for our listeners, kind of apologize on a very overall level. You and I, in particular, are so into this stuff that sometimes we forget how awful it is for most people. I mean, I look at every once in a while, I go into my Denon menu. I'm like, oh my God. Now, compared to the menu I had on like a 3805, which was just the worst. I mean, the worst. The manual was like, and I've described this in a podcast years ago, but it's absolutely true. It's like if you took every section of the book and you separated out the manual into the different sections of how to control each individual thing, and you just threw it up in the air and you gathered it all up and put them back together in that order, that there was no logical flow. It wasn't like, okay, if you want to do this, then the next thing you're going to want to do is this, the next thing you want to know is this, and next thing you know, no, it's not like that. It's like we're going alphabetically.
Right. Yeah, right.
Speaker setup is at the end.
They write it in the order in which they anticipate that you might connect things. It's just like, I want to look up the thing I want to connect. They're like, no. Go through the entire process that we anticipate a user might go through. Yeah. That's the only way to read this manual. Yeah. On the other thing with the Onkyo sounding clearer, it's like, this is one of those cases where I go, okay, if you really drill down into it, you can probably make them sound identical because both of them are tunable, and you got the Odyssey app that you could work with to alter the EQ if you wanted to continue using Odyssey, or you could use the manual EQ. Like, there's all sorts of things that could be done. However, there is the other side of the coin, which is if something, you plug it in, you go through its setup routine, and it gives you a better result or a result that you prefer, that is worth something.
That is absolutely, yeah.
That is totally, so I can totally agree with that. And like, Infinite Gary has been talking about things like that too, right? Sometimes you plug in a TV, you go to one of the presets, and you are instantly happy with it. Whereas another TV, maybe technically it's possible to make the second TV even more accurate, but the effort you would have to put into it to do so, it's like, that is worth something. Absolutely. The out-of-the-box experience is worth something.
Too. I am 100% behind that. I get people all the time who are like, what's the best TV? I'm like, you don't want the best TV. You don't want the best speakers. You don't want that. You don't want me to even tell you what that is. What you want me to tell you is what can I plug in and I'm just going to like it.
Right.
I'm just going to be happy with it. And that right there, that's why a lot of times some of my recommendations are based on aesthetics. Now, I don't take much flack for that, but I should. Because on this podcast, AV Rant, I should be taking flack for giving aesthetic recommendations. But when somebody comes to me and like, okay, here's my room, here's what it looks like, I'm like, dude, you want small speakers? No, I want the best sounding speakers I can. No, you don't. Because if I told you the best sounding speakers, I think you would be like, those are too big. I know they're too big. Here is the best speakers because of how your room looks. And I think that's, like you said, that's got value. That's got a lot of value. And we do not give Onkyo and Pioneer and to a certain extent Yamaha some of the love it deserves. And it's not really because we don't like those receivers. There was a long time that
I was Onkyo all the way for quite a while because at the time they were the features for price leader, whereas now Denon and Marantz are the features for price leaders, right? So,
and we're going to continue. I'm going to flip flop like you would not believe. I'm going to flip flop like a politician if somebody comes along and starts, undercutting Denon in price and features and Marantz. I don't see it happening, but guess what? I ain't seen it happening to Onkyo either. So it did. And it was amazing when it did. And Yamaha, Yamaha had a year where we hated them, and then they came back.
Yeah, and when it comes to whole house audio, they're my number one pick.
Yeah,
and you're not giving up much elsewhere when you do that either. So
no, you're not.
Yeah. No, this is a good reminder, Chris. I appreciate that because we, like Tom just said, because we're so into it and we're so focused on features, we sometimes forget about easiness of setup or out of the box experience or what just gives you the result faster that you prefer. That isn't always the way we're coming at it. So it's a good reminder. I appreciate that.
All right, let's get into our questions for this week. We'll start with Casey. This question comes from Twitter. When it comes to maximum bang for a buck, what do we think about DIY speaker kits? He's considering the Denovo Fusion 8 kit from DIY Sound Group. It's not the first time we've heard that group's name on this podcast.
Right.
To use as his LCR speakers behind a DIY spandex acoustically transparent screen. I know I know what he means by spandex. It's speaker grill cloth, but come on. DIY spandex. It makes it feel, for me, it makes it feel like it's a super.
I mean, I hope it isn't actually spandex.
It's not actually. It can't actually be spandex. I mean,
I don't know, baby. It is.
Shouldn't it be spandex? What
it
you
shouldn't
mean
be spandex. You don't want your screen to be super stretchy. That's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. So, what do I think? Now, he's got a good point here, and the good point is that he is going to put these behind a screen so he doesn't have to finish them. He just has to bolt them together. They could be as ugly as they want.
Yeah.
I mean, I got no problems with DIY designs. I don't often recommend them, and we've talked about this podcast probably 100 times. I don't often recommend them because most people aren't going to be happy with having to go through the trouble. Now, those that are going to be happy with it, they don't need me to tell them that they're going to like it. They're going to like finishing these and making them beautiful and making them themselves. You're going to put these behind an acoustically transparent screen. I have an inherent mistrust for DIY groups. I do, because I don't always believe that they have good sound design. Okay, sound design behind what their products are selling. I mean, a lot of the stuff I hear, it's all anecdotal. I'm not seeing a lot of measurements. I'm not seeing a lot of real. I've seen very few articles that are testing these DIY designs. And that's what I want to see. I want to see that. Now, can these be good bang for your buck, especially if you don't have to finish them? Yes, they absolutely can. The problem is when it comes to people saying, hey, I can buy this DIY kit for $100 and it's going to sound, according to everybody, as good as this $1,000 speaker. Well, first of all, I don't believe that, number one. Number two, you're not factoring in your time. And your time is worth something. Now, would you get paid at work? Would you get paid, for overtime? Would you get paid for doing this stuff? And then slice off, or divide that by how much enjoyment you're going to, or multiply it by how much enjoyment you're not going to get by doing this. And then that's your actual final price. Because it's going to take you quite a few hours. I mean, these people are like, oh, well, all you got to do is, bolt it together and then sand everything down and then, put on the veneer and then stain the veneer and then put, some sort of finish on the veneer to protect it. And you're done. That's all you got to do is just that. Hey, dude, that's like maybe 2 or 3 weekends of your life gone. How much is that worth to you? So
yeah,
but
I mean, in the case of this particular kit, it comes with a baffle. It doesn't come with any of the rest of the cabinet, including any acoustic fill, poly fill that you might put in there. So they give you the plans for the cabinet to build, and if you're skilled at that, it's going to be a piece of cake. And yeah, going behind an acoustically transparent screen, you don't have to finish, or you can just spray paint it matte black, and super easy. There's no question you save on shipping, you save on somebody else didn't have to assemble it for you. There's no fancy finish on it. You're absolutely saving money with a do-it-yourself speaker. I'm not opposed to them. It's hard for me to recommend them to most people for a lot of the reasons that Tom just went into. But I'm certainly not against them whatsoever. Yeah.
Dude, I would totally buy the box, though. I'm going to be honest with you.
But that's us. That's us, right?
I would buy the box.
Skilled.
I mean, if you're skilled, but this is where I think I run into issues here. Is if you're skilled, you're not going to follow the plans exactly. You're like, I could make it better, right? Because I'm good at this. This is for like entry level people. I can brace this even more than it's already braced. Well, unfortunately, you are actually changing the design of the speaker. Many speaker designers will tell you that they take into account with their crossover, with their speaker, with their design and their choices of drivers. Cabinet flex, internal dimensions, how much batting is back there and everything else. All that stuff is taken. You start putting in the extra bracing, you're changing every single element of that, and to the point where you're no longer going to get whatever sound that you are expecting to get. Will it be better sound? I don't know, but guess who also doesn't know? You. And that's what it comes down to for me. So to me, it's a slippery slope. Dude, you got my blessing to do it. I mean, it's going to be behind.
The other side of this coin is, if this is the amount of money he has to spend, what could he get in a finished speaker for the same amount of money? And the truth is, not one this efficient that can play this loud. And maybe that's the thing that he's going for. Right? Yeah. So you have my blessing 100%.
You can get, an NHT Super Zero for less than this.
But it doesn't play anywhere near this loud.
I know, but does he like a lot of times these people buy this stuff and they don't need it. They're sitting 6 feet from the screen anyways. So who cares that they can play loud enough to fill an auditorium? They're not in the auditorium. They're 6 feet away from the dang thing. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, he gives us no information other than this, which is fine. But this, there's a lot more that goes on here that you need to know. Is this great bang for your buck? Sure.
Yeah.
But do you need this? And can you get something that will do a lot of everything you need it to do for less? And it's a finished speaker that you can,
I guess we would say forever. It can be very good. Just proceed with caution.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like avoid at all costs. Certainly not.
No.
It's like it can be good, but just it's also not what a lot of the DIY enthusiasts are, which is DIY is always better than a pre-made product, no matter the cost, right? Because you get a lot of that. And that is also not true. It's somewhere in the middle, like most things in life.
Yeah. Earl. So after being impressed by a demo at his local Magnolia store, Earl pulled the trigger on a Macintosh MX 122 Pre-Pro and Macintosh MC8207 7-channel amplifier to replace his old Denon AVR 3801 receiver. Wow, that's an old receiver. Great. Okay, so he's got Macintosh gear now. Which is, by the way,
I just wanted to mention that Macintosh Pre-Pro, it is a Marantz 8802A. That's what it is. Costs several $1,000s more, but it is that AV Pre-Pro. Now
they are all owned by D&M Holdings, and when I was at D&M or Boston Acoustics, which is also owned by D&M, for a promo event thinking they were rolling out some speakers that were an absolute flop. I mean, they were awful. I looked at it with these are the stupidest speakers I ever saw, but whatever. And they're gone. You couldn't find them now if you wanted to. They had Marantz all over. Not Marantz. They had Macintosh all over the place in their demo rooms and stuff like that. So,
but
it's all the same.
There's no question with Macintosh gear. The aesthetics of them are pretty darn gorgeous. So, is that worth several $1,000s to you? I don't know, but if it is, it is. So, okay.
So, and then unfortunately, this is what we run into with our high-end audio stuff. And it happens more often than we'd like to admit, is that you just got rebadged stuff that is in some way changed, and they're going to tell you it's changed fundamentally because they added silver wire or something to it. But for the most part, you're getting 99% of the performance that you got from the original thing. All right, so anyways, he's got the gear. So what should he do with a 4-ohm, 8-ohm switch on his new amp? His Martin Logan speakers are 4-ohm, but he remembers an Audioholics video recommending that the switch on the Yamaha receiver be set to 8 ohms no matter what your speakers were. Does this advice hold for Macintosh? I don't know, does it?
So I was reading through the manual because I wanted to see what was going on here, and I don't believe, from what I read, now I could be wrong about this, but I don't believe it's the same situation. In the case of the Yamaha or any of the Denon and Marantz receivers where you can set the impedance of the speakers as one of the settings, that is a current choke. It chokes down the amount of maximum current that can go out of the speaker binding post so as not to allow the speakers to overheat. Voltage stays the same, current
amps overheat with the speakers, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Current gets choked off. So that's why the Audioholics advice is if you just want to make sure your dynamic headroom is not clipped off, then don't use the lower impedance setting. If 6 ohms is the highest that's available, use that. If 8 ohms is the highest that's available, use that on most AV receivers. Now, in this case, with this amplifier, and I don't know who makes this amplifier because I haven't seen a design exactly like this from just about anybody, so I'm not sure, because Macintosh doesn't actually make anything. They just sort of get stuff from other OEMs and put their name on it and their aesthetics. But anyway, they say you get 25 amps maximum current in either setting. The amperage doesn't change. It's not an amp choke. But they limit the output to 200 watts regardless of the impedance setting. So it's 200 watts per channel into 8 ohms, and a perfect amplifier would deliver 400 watts into 4 ohms.
4 ohms, that's right.
This one limits itself to output 200 watts into 4 ohms. But the amperage stays the same in either case, which means this is a gain setting. That's
weird.
What it is. It's changing the voltage, right?
Because
if the amperage stays the same, but the impedance gets cut in half, then the only way to keep the wattage the same is to cut the voltage in half.
Right.
That's the only way that can work. So since it seems like it's a gain switch, and this is designed to work with that preamp, so that preamp being an AV8802A, because that's what it is, it can put out like 4 volts from its pre-outs, which is a lot of voltage from a pre-out. It's like way more than you usually need. Most amplifiers can be driven to their full wattage with 1.2 volts coming out of the pre-outs.
Right.
That Marantz and this Macintosh can put out like 4 volts from the pre-outs. There's a lot there. So if you were to put a whole bunch of volts into this 8 ohm setting and connect it to 4 ohm speakers, it might drive itself a little nuts because too much gain in the amplifier. That's essentially what we're getting at here. Too much gain in the amplifier, which would mean you could compensate for that in the pre-pro by turning the trim level way down, and that's what Odyssey would do if you left this amp in the 8 ohm setting, which is the high, let's call it the high gain setting because that's what I think it is. If you left it in that setting and connected it to 4 ohm speakers, you would end up with a low trim level from the pre-pro because it's trying to tamp down the voltage. Whereas you put it in this amplifier in its 4 ohm setting, which I will call the low gain setting, and you connect it to 4 ohm speakers, it's going to keep the trim level in the normal range where trim levels usually end up. I'm pretty darn sure that's what's going on here based on what's said in the manual.
So we're saying 4 ohms.
In other words, put it to what they say. Put it to the 4 ohm setting if you have 4 ohm speakers, because otherwise I think the gain is going to be too high. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here.
All right. Yeah. All right. You could probably try both though. And be just
Honestly,
fine.
yeah. I mean, try both.
End.
Run Odyssey, and if you notice that the trim level when it's in the 8 ohm setting has been lowered quite a bit, then you go, okay, Rob was correct, and then there you go.
Yeah. So he says he'll be using XLR cables to connect the pre-pro to the amplifier, which is normal. How much does he need to spend on cables? The Magnolia rep tried to sell him Audio Quest cables, priced between $250 and $500 a pair.
Yep, that's
of course he did. Of course he did. Claiming that they are audible differences compared to cheaper cables, although they suggested that power cords made a difference as well. So maybe not listening. Okay. Don't listen to anything this person says ever again. Okay, I'm glad that you like the I keep calling it Marantz, the Macintosh gear. I'm glad that you're happy with it. XLR cables, literally, you need something that will not break. I bought some from, I believe they were Monoprice. They're very nice looking. They're kind of like a gunmetal gray. The connector is. They're super solid. They're fine. And when I say fine, that means they make no audible change to my signal as it goes through. And I use these things. In fact, I use them on my. I had a 2-channel pre-pro for a while, along with an amp from Emotiva, and that's what I used on that one as well. And those work great. You do not need to buy expensive cables, and for the love of God, do not buy a power cable for any reason. Unless yours gets lost, in which case buy the cheapest one you can that will support however much power you're supposed to be getting to that thing.
I will just say this is a 7-channel amplifier. It has 7 XLR inputs, and a lot of times you'll find bundles of 8 XLR cables together.
Right.
Because I guess that would be 7.1, or it's just a patch cable that they're using at a concert or something like that. So it's multiple stereo drivers that they're doing, so they always give it in pairs. But Emotiva sells a bundle of 7 XLR cables. It's 4 feet long, which is probably long enough for your stack of this pre-pro on top of this amplifier. But it's a bundle of 7 for $50. That's really not bad. It's pretty darn good. It's coming from Emotiva. It's what they would sell you to connect their pre-pro to their amplifier. So they think it's good enough to drive a very high-powered amplifier. $50 for 7 XLR cables, really not bad. I might point you there. Because even the monoprice ones are like $7 a piece plus shipping, though. So,
yeah, the one you've got linked up here, the monoprice one, the 6 foot
long one. Yeah,
that's literally the same cable I'm using right now.
All right.
That's the one I'm using for my microphone. It's a 6 foot long cable. That is it. That is the exact cable. So, I mean, that's $12 cable, but it's 6 feet long. You don't need something that's 6 feet.
Yeah. So if you got 7 of those, it'd be more expensive than the bundle from Emotiva. So
yeah,
I will throw it out there in case you want to drive yourself nuts, because Blue Jeans cable uses broadcast quality cable. Now, this is the XLR cable that you would use if you were wiring a stadium and needed to run 300 feet.
You didn't want to get any RF interference as you were doing that, or
really
anything
don't
else.
Need this for the 1.5 feet between your preamp and amplifier, most likely. You really don't need it, but if you wanted to, you could get a bundle of the Blue Jeans professional grade quality XLR cables for about $220. Now that's cheaper than a single Audio Quest XLR cable. So if you want to look at it that way, not a bad deal. Total overkill. get the Emotiva for 50
And by
bucks.
overkill, it's really not doing anything. I mean, it's
Yeah.
literally it's like, I mean, I can't even imagine
Well,
what
you could probably put a
liken it to.
fluorescent light next to it and still not get a hum. So I guess there's that.
There's that. Justin Not Bieber on Facebook said, after listening to our advice last week, he did give a look at audiophile smartphone models and the LG V20, which is at the very top of every list. Its specs are rather remarkable: 132 decibel signal to noise radio, or a ratio radio. Are there any other smartphone options that look really good, like a really good candidate for a portable high res audio player? No, I don't know. What do you got, Rob?
So the HTC 10 is supposed to be really good, but it's a little bit older model now.
Yeah.
And one that just got announced is, so the LG G6 has been out for a little while now, and it has the I don't know what you call it, remarkable thing of being the first Dolby Vision enabled smartphone. That was the G6. Well, the G6 Plus is on its way. All right, this is going to be an LG G6 Plus. It's not like the iPhone thing where plus means bigger. It's the same size. It's just going to be the new G6 Plus model, which gets all of the audiophile, quote unquote, DACs and headphone amplifier of the V20. So they're like boosting up the audio section of the G6, calling it the G6 Plus. You still have Dolby Vision in that one. So if you want to have like everything imaginable in a phone, you could just wait I don't know what it is, couple of weeks now until the G6 Plus comes out. There you go.
One thing that LG V20 did not list was that the Pioneer and Onkyo portable audio players do is MQA support. How is this still a thing?
Oh, they're trying. They were all over some of the most recent, music shows and stuff there.
I'm telling you. Can we explain MQA as a codec? Yes. Could a phone potentially add MQA support just with an app or an update? Isn't it like metadata? I keep forgetting what this thing is.
It is metadata. So it
right?
stands for Master Quality Authenticated.
And it's from Meridian, right?
It is Meridian. Yeah. So it's Master Quality Authenticated was the MQA stands for. Now, if you want to know what MQA is, it's Hokum. That's what it is. But if you want to get into the technical side of what it is,
it's expensive Hokum. That's how they're making their money.
It is a CD audio file. All right. Now, here's the thing: if you get a MQA stream or an MQA downloaded file from 2L or somebody like that sells them, right? If you get that and you play it back with a player that does not have MQA decoding, it'll still play, and it'll play it as a CD file. 44.1 kilohertz sampling, 16-bit audio. It is a CD file. Now, it has this extra metadata on top of it. So this is a little bit akin to on a Blu-ray that has Atmos. Right. You have Dolby True HD. So your Dolby True HD decoder will decode that if it doesn't have an Atmos decoder. If it does have an Atmos decoder, it can look at the extra metadata that's on top of the original stream and give you that. So that's what MQA is. MQA is metadata on top of a regular CD audio file that any player can play in CD quality, and then one that has an MQA decoder can use this extra metadata to supposedly bring it back to 9624 quality, which is inaudible. Now, all of the demonstrations that they've been doing where they've been comparing it to show you how amazing MQA is, they've been comparing it to 96 kilobit MP3.
Oh, really?
So totally fair. Totally fair. They didn't bother comparing it to the CD file. They compared it to a 96 kilobit MP3, which amazingly people could hear the difference. Wow.
So much better.
Lossy versus CD. But where some people have pointed out on the technical side, true technical difference, if you take something that was sampled at 96 kilohertz and 24-bit audio, which means it could have frequencies as high as 48 kilohertz in the signal, and it could have dynamic range as wide as 144 decibels. Now, if you took that and then just rammed it into a 44.1 16-bit container without filtering it, without dithering the noise out of it, without processing it in any way to make it suitable for a 44.1 16-bit container, it will create distortion. And they've been pointing out how some of these MQA files have this extra information in the metadata that would essentially become distortion when you just ram it down into the smaller container with no care, no thought given to it, right?
Let's master quality audio.
That is,
so
yeah.
They're
with no mastering. So it's a sham. It's hokum. It's completely unnecessary. However, I want to get back to the whole thing of this high res audio, 96 kilohertz, 24-bit, or even higher than that, right? Why does this stuff exist? It totally makes sense to record in that instead of recording in 44.1 16-bit because, again, you need to have the filters in place. If you're going to record at 44.1 kilohertz, 44.1 thousand samples per second, if any frequencies above 22 kilohertz exist, get into the microphone and down the cable into the recorder, they will cause distortion. There must be a filter on that. And it has to be a very, very steep filter. And if there are any sounds that exceed 96 decibels above the noise floor, those will create distortion. You must put some kind of filter or compressor onto there. So it's easier to record at a higher resolution, at a higher sampling rate. You don't have to filter as much. It's easier to get a good, clean sample when you're recording. When you're working with it, you actually want to oversample it. You want to mathematically bump it up to 192 32-bit or 384 32-bit so that you can make all your changes digitally. Right. And then you're supposed to filter it at the end of it back down to what we can actually hear, which can easily fit in a 44.1 16-bit container, but you have to filter it. So when no care is given, and you just take this higher sampled, higher bit rate signal and ram it into a smaller container without any care given to it whatsoever, the smaller size sample sounds worse, right? So this is an issue because if you're getting the high-res file and it genuinely sounds better than the low-res file, it's not that the low-res file has to sound that bad, but unfortunately we're in a situation where what if they just do frequently? What are you as a consumer supposed to do? Are you supposed to pound your fist and say, well, I know the smaller container can sound better, but they never do? Right? This is the problem we're facing now as a consumer. I'm upset about it because there's no reason that we need to pay more, have a bigger container, take up more storage space. There's no technical reason to do it except for laziness and wanting to sell us something that they can claim is better than CD quality. It's better if you're lazy and you take no care in creating the CD version. But you as a consumer have to look at that and go, well, 9 times out of 10, the high-res version does actually sound better because they put no care into the CD version. That's the unfortunate situation. So that's my take on high-res audio.
Well, on MQA specifically.
Yeah.
So Tidal seems to be the most visible streaming partner for MQA. Do all audio streamers that support Tidal also support MQA? Can you buy MQA tracks? Can he encode his own CDs as MQA files?
That's totally unnecessary.
I don't know why you would do that last one. I don't know. So I'm going to guess. Here we go. Ready?
Sure.
All audio streamers that support Tidal also support MQA. Audio streamers. I would guess yes. Can you buy MQA tracks?
Yes.
I would guess yes.
Yeah.
Can you encode his own CD files as MQA files? I'm going to say, why would you?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to put
unnecessary to encode your own CDs as MQA. There's nothing.
Yeah, it's
nothing to be
not a container that's somehow superior. It's just a container. That container's metadata, really. So
yeah, I mean, the purpose is it is a smaller file size than getting the just 96 kilohertz 24-bit FLAC file. Right? That's going to be a certain number of megabytes. The MQA version will be fewer megabytes. It'll be a smaller file because it's 44.1 16-bit with metadata on top of it.
Rather than the full file.
Rather than the full file. So it's a physically smaller file. Is it important to have that 96 kilohertz 24-bit information? Only if the masterers were lazy or nefarious. But unfortunately, that is the case. A lot of them are lazy and or nefarious. So there's that. But yeah. Not all Tidal streaming hardware can play back MQA. You need a specific decoder. And getting back to the question, could it potentially just be added to a phone? Really tough to say because AudioQuest, going back to that company, the one reasonable product they make, the Dragonfly USB DAC, which actually isn't crazy overpriced and performs quite nicely, that got a firmware update that added MQA. So must you have certain hardware in it? I don't know. I mean, whatever was built into the Dragonfly had whatever was necessary to do it via firmware update. So I'm honestly not entirely sure.
The AudioQuest name. I think that's what it needed,
right?
In order to make that happen. I think anybody could do it. I think that they're not going to let anybody do it unless they're got names like AudioQuest.
I mean, being that it's decoding metadata, it should be possible to do it via software as long as you have enough computing power. And
that's
a smartphone should easily have enough computing
be able to
power.
Do that.
It's just whether somebody's going to pay the license to make this happen.
So in addition to the portable high-res player, he also wants a device that can be used at home. Okay, so this is something separate. He's used a squeeze box in the Chromecast audio, but his wife would really like something that can be controlled directly on the front panel, on its front panel, without having to always launch an app on a separate device. Okay, he doesn't want to spend more than $400, but he still wants to access and playback of high-res files and streaming from Tidal. Sony's high-res network players would fit the bill, but they're way too expensive. He found a project based on the Raspberry Pi 3 that's very affordable. Do we have any other suggestions? I like the project based on I like my Raspberry Pi. I'll be honest with you. I think the Raspberry Pi is a nice little device. If you can make something work on that, I would.
I looked around. I mean, network audio players. It's funny because there's the low end, which is that they're assuming your phone is your source, so it's essentially an MP3 speaker, or it's a network speaker, but you have to send the audio from your phone. That's the lower priced, lower end stuff. The higher end stuff is like crazy high end price because they're only marketing it at people they think are so old that they don't use smartphones. So they're like, well, you're old and rich, so we here at Nat Electronics are going to sell you a $2,000 network streamer.
Moved out and stuff like that. I don't want to call them rich. They just have a disposable income, and you know, their whatever 401k makes them take a cut every year, or they have to pay taxes on it. And they'll spend it on whatever.
Yeah. So I couldn't find a solution that's really better than that Raspberry Pi 3 project. I will say, Onkyo/Pioneer, and you already know this because they have their portable audio players that support Tidal and MQA and high-res and all that. They have talked about adding MQA support to their AV receivers. And that, I mean, it's not here yet. I'm just saying it might be worth keeping an eye on because you might at some point be able to get quite an affordable Onkyo AV receiver that streams Tidal with MQA support, that type of thing. So the solution might just be an Onkyo or Pioneer AV receiver. How nice that is to use just with its front panel controls or the included remote versus doing it through the app, I'm not sure if that satisfies.
Well, I don't know how the Raspberry Pi app. I mean, basically, you have to use an app with that or some sort of.
Well, this Raspberry Pi project includes the touchscreen, the official Raspberry Pi touchscreen, so you do it all on a touchscreen.
See, I mean, that's just like trading one device for another. I mean, I understand not wanting to use your phone for doing everything, and I can understand that because my wife's like, get your phone out of the home theater.
But if you look at something like a Chromecast audio, say, right, there's no way to control that whatsoever without a phone. Whereas this having its own built-in touchscreen, at least if you don't have your phone on, you can still control the thing. Yeah. So I actually think this Raspberry Pi project that you found is the best solution for this type of price range, right? If you were like, I'll spend $4,000, okay, you go get a Sonica DAC from Oppo, right? That thing will be fantastic, but it's over this price range.
So whatever player he's using, if his goal is to make use of the high-end DAC in the player and to potentially use the MQA format, there's no point. I can't read this because it's not in English. Using a digital connection from the player to his Emotiva preamp, correct? Correct. You're going to use a DAC inside. If he's going to make the use of the high-end DAC in the player, he's going to have to go analog to the Emotiva preamp. And
that's right.
It's just going to basically do whatever bass management it's going to do, or if it even does that, and then send it to the amp, which will then send it to the speakers, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah. So if your goal is I'm going to get these 9624 or MQA or whatever files, and I want my player to handle that at the highest quality, the player needs to do all the decoding. Right.
But then you have to be very careful because a lot of times, if you're going to do bass management within your pre-pro or your receiver or whatever it is that you're doing, you send it in analog, right? And you got nice 96, whatever stupid thing is that MQA is, and it's going out that way, analog into the receiver or the pre-pro, and the pre-pro is like, I got to do bass management and room correction. I'm going to convert all this to digital. I'm going to limit it down to 44.1 16-bit.
Yeah, most of them limited to 4824, 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. That's what
I'm going to limit it down to that, because that's all I can operate in, and then I'm going to do my bass management, my room correction, and then I'm going to convert it back to analog again and send it back out. So you have to have, and I know Emotiva makes this because I've seen it and I've actually used it before. They have a very specific pre-pros that they'll do every bass management in the analog domain.
That's right. Analog bass management. Yeah.
It's clunky and a lot harder to deal with, and it has no room correction because of course it can't. But that's what you'd have to have. You have to have that. if you're going to use this kind of setup.
But if you're just connecting it to a pair of speakers and there's no subwoofer involved, then that's easy.
Yeah. Theoretically. Sometimes we'll do that digital conversion anyways, just because that's what they do. All right, Mark. That's a long one. Mark is hoping we can clarify and explain a couple of audio specification terms to him. But first, he says that our podcast might have convinced him to upgrade his car stereo, not because of any recommendation or advice we've given. Thank you, I guess. But because his old stock stereo can't connect to his phone in any way. So during his long commute, he's just using the tiny speaker built into his phone, which means sometimes he doesn't hear things clearly. Case in point, when we mentioned echo slap, or in this case, slap echo, he somehow heard it as pickle slap.
Mm-hmm.
So he works alongside several engineers, and they got to talk about audio and video sometimes. And he was talking about adding acoustic panels to his home theater and casually brought up pickle slap because he didn't want to have that. One of the engineers finally figured out that he was talking about slap echo, but he made sure to call over all of his engineer buddies so he could hear Mark repeat the phrase pickle slap and enjoy a good laugh. So Mark would rather avoid a repeat of that incident. So now he's asking some questions.
That was probably going to be the title of this podcast until
Pickle
everything
slap?
was horribly wrong, and we had to change the title. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, but pickle slap is a great title. We might name it someone other random one, pickle slap. Yeah, okay. I'm going to blame Rob's voice for that one. Reference volume. We've said it. He's read about it. And he still isn't completely clear on what it is. Also, on his Anki receiver, the volume readout goes from 0 to 100. So when we talk about setting the AV receiver to 0 dB, obviously, we aren't talking about putting the volume all the way down to his absolute lowest point, right? So how can you tell what reference volume is on his readout? Well, okay, reference volume. We've talked. I'll let Rob go into all the specifics because he loves doing it. And if I take it away from him, he gets mad at me. But it depends on I don't know how old his Onkyo receiver is, but I know I've dealt with Onkyo receivers that did not have the option of seeing the reference volume.
That's right. What they call the relative volume.
Instead, what they gave you was 0 to 100, and then you just had to go. And what is 0 to 100? It's nothing. It is a number, as in 1 to 10 or 1 to 15
Very
or
arbitrary.
1 to 20. Yeah. It's completely arbitrary. Reference volume is this very specific number where when you put it to 0, if you're sitting 1 meter away from the speakers, you should be getting the reference volume, which would be 105, right?
It's 105 decibels out of any speaker channel. It's 115 dB out of the subwoofer channel maximum, with an average of 85 decibels for the entire movie. Now that's the cinema reference volume, right? That's sort of where it comes from. Reference volume is a cinema standard for full-size theaters, and they're saying when you're sitting in the primary seat, which is 2/3 of the way into the theater, every speaker should be balanced so that you get an average of 85 decibels over the course of the whole movie. This is A-weighted, by the way. So it's A-weighted, which means they're really only looking between 500 and 5,000 hertz. But that's the reference is 85 decibels average with peaks of 105 from any given channel. So remember, in a full-size theater, you have multiple surround speakers. So when all of those multiple surround speakers play at once, at their maximum peak, it should be 105 decibels, which means each individual surround speaker in a full-size cinema is probably quite a bit less than 105. And then the subwoofer channel, the LFE channel, could be 115 decibels maximum. So that is what reference volume is. Now at home, they generally lower that to 75 decibels average. That's what things get remastered for the home, and they're like, nobody at home is listening to 85, so they generally remaster it to 75.
I might listen to 85 occasionally,
That's right.
But very, very occasionally.
But yeah, reference volume just basically means when they were making the soundtrack, this is the level they were, this is what the mastering engineers were listening at, and this is where they balanced everything. So when they want you to hear a certain sound at a relative volume to all the other sounds, this is what it's the reference. It's the reference volume. And as soon as you go away from reference volume, you alter that balance, because human hearing is not linear. When things get quieter, we hear the mid-range much better than we hear the treble or the bass, especially the bass. If bass drops below about 65 decibels, we might not hear it at all. It's there, a microphone can pick it up, but we might not even perceive it. So if you turn down your volume knob, say, to -20, there might be lots of bass sounds that were 75 decibels, 85 decibels at reference volume. Now you've turned down the volume dial by 20 decibels. You might not hear those bass sounds at all. So that's why it's called a reference volume, so that you know you're hearing what you are essentially supposed to be hearing.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
So what is it good for? Well, it's good so that you know, at least in my case, I always know, like when I'm watching a movie at home on the Blu-ray, I'm going to want it between -10 and I'll say -15 and -5, someplace in there. It's if I'm watching by myself and there's people asleep in the house and I don't want it to be too loud, all the way up until I'm trying to impress people.
Sure.
So -5 is I'm trying to impress people. -15 is I want it to be loud enough that I'm enjoying myself and I'm feeling the bass and I'm not waking up my wife. But if I'm watching something on YouTube, it's -30 for sure, because it's just mixed. YouTube tends to be much, much hotter.
Things that come out of the Xbox
Netflix.
One tend to be way louder than the.
No, that could be the case too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I know my PlayStation 3, I used to go above reference volume all the time.
Sure.
The Netflix is usually around -20. And it's just always that way. I know you could probably memorize whatever numbers you get on your thing too, and that's fine. It's for the reference volume. It gives you at 0 what you're supposed to be getting. With what you have, there's no way of knowing anything.
Now,
is it
I
important?
will say
it really isn't important though.
In several of those AV receivers, because there's lots of AV receivers out there that didn't give you the relative volume scale. They give you one of these 0 to 100 type of scales. It's often mentioned somewhere in there. It'll be like a footnote, or it'll be in the troubleshooting section if you really, really look for it, because typically where you'll find it is as a footnote in the speaker level settings menu.
Right.
Because somewhere it'll say, these levels should read 75 decibels on an SPL meter when your master volume is set to 87.
Random number.
There's no way you could know. You can't intuit it. You're not supposed to know what it is, but there's probably a footnote somewhere in the manual that does mention a number, and they will say this is what the speaker trim level should read when that's the master volume setting. That might be your only clue.
Yeah. So he also hears D and B said a lot. We've been saying it ourselves, and he sees it written as little d, big B, and he knows it stands for decibel. But it's used all over the place in reference to some very different specs. For example, what does it mean when we say a certain speaker or subwoofer has a frequency response of, for example, 25 hertz to 150 hertz plus or minus 3 dB? That's a good question. So if you're looking at a graph of a frequency response, right? Well, the bottom of the graph is each one of the different frequencies. So it might go from 20, in this case, probably if we're looking at a subwoofer, it might go from like 10 or maybe even less. We'll say 0 hertz up to, we'll say 250 hertz.
That's very common.
Okay. And what you're going to see is a line that goes up and down. And what those lines are is how many decibels or how loud it is at each one of those frequencies. So they put the same signal through, they put a sweep through the signals at the same strength, and they see how the subwoofer reacts. Now, if they're doing it right, it's usually on some sort of outdoors or in an anechoic chamber or something like that, where the outside world is of minimal effect, or the effect of the outside world has been negated in some way, either through mathematics or through putting it in an anechoic chamber. Then they measure it, they do the sweep and they measure it and they see how much variance they get. So a subwoofer that's got good very flat response, that line's going to be almost straight, which means, if it's 87 dB or 87 decibels at 100 hertz, it should be very close to 87 dB at 50 hertz and very close to 87 dB at 15 hertz, or maybe 25 hertz, and then maybe 20, and at some point it starts to drop off. So what we're generally saying is we're looking for a subwoofer or a speaker, in this case a subwoofer, that has very little variance, which means it doesn't color the sound. It doesn't change the signal as it
Certain
comes in.
frequencies are not drastically louder or quieter than the average loudness of all the frequencies. So,
And this is where you end up with people where we talk about like certain speaker manufacturers they have their own sound. They're going for a sound. Or I have said in the past, and so has Rob, they have their own curve.
Mm-hmm.
So what this means is that they're not looking for a straight line that has just very little variance, only plus or minus 3 dB, which means if you took a line, you put it, we call it a regression line. Anyways, straight through the middle of all of these data points at each one of these frequencies, the middle line, no measurement would be 3 dB louder or 3 dB less than that line. And then you would tell people, okay, well, it's good plus or minus 3 dB down from 150 hertz down to 25 in this example hertz. And then at 25 hertz, it's probably lower than 3 dB. And you might say, and it's good down to 6 dB at 19 hertz.
Right.
Like, okay, well, this is where the drop off is happening, but we still have output all the way down to 19 hertz. It's just softer.
Mm-hmm.
That just gives us some information. Some speaker manufacturers have a sound. They have a curve that they're going for that is not a straight line. They want certain frequencies to be accentuated and other frequencies they don't care as much about. And maybe there's a little bit of a dip there, and they're fine with that because they think, well, it's usually because their speakers can't reproduce them anyways, but it's often because that's part of the sound they're going for. Is that inherently bad? No, it's not. I don't personally want it, but if you hear the speakers and you like them, I'm not going to say you're a bad person. I'm just going to say that that's not a flat speaker, and that's okay. I want a flat speaker, and that's also okay.
Sure. So decibels themselves are they're a measure of, well, in this case, pressure. Sound is pressure, and it's a logarithmic scale. So what'll happen is, decibel literally means a tenth of a bell. So 10 decibels, every time you go up by 10 decibels, that is a doubling of pressure. That's what the scale actually means. So it's this curve of a scale. It's a logarithmic scale that gives you an indication of sound pressure. That's what it is referencing.
Mm-hmm. So another example is when a speaker manufacturer lists sensitivity or efficiency of a speaker. They'll write something like 89 dB, 1 watt, 1 meter. dB shows up in both specs. So what is actually measuring? Again, it's measuring sound pressure.
Yeah.
We put 1 watt into this speaker, and we put a microphone 1 meter away.
That's right.
Why did we do this? We do this because if everybody does this, we know how much sound your speaker will put out with 1 watt compared to somebody else's speaker who also puts out 1 watt. Not only that, we can use this to say, but I sit 2 meters away. How loud how many watts do I need to put in order to get to, backing this back up again, reference volume?
Mm-hmm.
If I want to get to reference volume and I'm sitting 2 meters away, I can use this information, 89 dB, 1 watt, 1 meter, to say, okay, reference volume is 105 peaks.
Peak. Yep.
105 peaks. So I need to be able to get to 105 peak, and I'm sitting 2 meters away. How many watts do I need to have available to my speaker in order to get there? How much power does it take to put out the sound pressure wave that I need in order to hear reference volume at my seated position? Can I even get there with my current setup? That's what this basically tells us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, he sort of goes on to ask, like, these particular specs that he's mentioned, this frequency response and sensitivity, aside from what they represent, how useful are they when you're deciding what speaker to buy, right? It is these indications of, well, sort of how flat the response is, whether it gets noticeably louder or quieter at any given frequency, or what the window is, right? What's the tolerance? Over what range of frequencies does it say pretty darn linear, meaning it's pretty darn accurate? The signal coming in is saying, play this sound at this loudness for this long, and if this speaker is plus or minus 6 decibels over the given range, well, some sounds could literally be 12 decibels louder than others, even though the signal said play them both at the same loudness. That isn't very accurate.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why a fairly narrow plus or minus range means, in general, I mean, lots
There's
you can
lots
get
of
into,
caveats here. Yeah.
lots of caveats, but it's an indication that it is closer to being accurate to the signal. The sensitivity, like Tom just said, is a very good indication of how much power you'll need to have on tap on your amplifier to get these speakers to a certain level. The other one that goes hand in hand with that is how much wattage can these speakers absorb.
Right.
They'll usually give you a recommended power rating, and it'll be,
Right.
we recommend you have an amplifier between 50 and 250 watts. Well, that then you can put at least 250 watts into these speakers. So you can calculate based on every time you double your distance. If you were in a wide open field and you doubled your distance away from the speaker from 1 meter to 2 meters, or from 2 meters to 4 meters, wide open field, you'd lose 6 decibels off of that first figure. But in a room where there's walls and there's sound reflecting and reinforcing, you more or less lose 3, maybe 4. So if you want to be, on the safe side, you say you lose 4 decibels every time you double your distance. And every time you want to increase that first number, that in this case you said like 91 or 89 dB per watt per meter, right? Every time you want to increase that first number by 3 decibels, you double the number of watts. So between decibels, watts, and meters, you can figure out how much power you need to put into a given speaker to get a certain volume back at a given distance. It's a very useful spec to have.
Right. And again, like we said, there's all kinds of caveats here that you have to take in. Like when somebody says that there's, and you'll see me say this on this podcast over and over again, somebody will claim, 25 hertz output, and I'll look at the subwoofer and go, nope.
Right.
I mean, yes, it's moving at 25 hertz. It's just not making a sound loud enough.
I mean,
for anybody
sometimes
to
you'll just see that. You'll see the spec just listed as frequency response, no parameters.
Yeah.
Right? No plus or minus. So there's a good indication of, well, plus or minus 25 decibels. This is the range it can play. How useful is that? Not very accurate.
Nick is back with his basement theater plan. He thinks he has settled on a layout that he really likes. He now thinks he will take our suggestion of creating a hallway so that people don't have to open a door and walk through the theater to get to the rest of the basement. The support beam will now be inside his theater along with access to his equipment closet. Access is in the theater. Is that what that means?
It's within the theater, Because before, when he had the smaller room, the equipment closet access was going to be outside of his theater. So he'd have to leave the theater to get to the equipment.
And now, instead of 2 rows of recliners, he can rotate his small room plans 90 degrees and simply have a wider row of seats. If the guests come over, he can add beanbag chairs up front and bar stools in the back. But most days, it'll be his family of 4. Now they can all enjoy pretty darn good angles. And are you showing these pictures?
I am showing these images. Yep.
All right, there we go. Okay. So most of the ceiling will have a 7'2" ceiling height, and only the small area behind the support beam will have the lower 6'10" ceiling. The seats up and about the seats end up about 2/3 into the room, so it really looks like it's working out nicely. Now I'm gonna say, where's the support beam? It's right there. I'm gonna say, if you can, man, just like make that ceiling. No, you can't. No, it's gonna be lower. Okay. Going on. I got it mixed up in my head. Now he's really trying to figure out his HVAC situation. For the equipment closet, he figures he can draw in air from the adjacent room and exhaust the hot air into the hallway. He really does want the theater to be soundproof, though, so he doesn't particularly just want passive vents for air exchange, which leads him back to the idea of dead vents. He drew up his preliminary ideas, but he'd like any suggestions we might have. Am I looking at this here? I see the equipment rack. Where's the dead vent?
All right. So the way he's drawn it up is, I guess he's going to have an air conditioning duct or an HVAC duct go from the mechanical room, which is way over on the right, somehow like under the stairwell, because he's thinking of using a dead vent to force the cold and or hot, the air conditioned air from the stairwell into the back of the theater, and then exhaust the hot or, well, whatever, the exhaust the air out of the theater into the adjacent bedroom.
Ooh.
Now, so first of all, I want to make a really clear caveat to you, which is I think you should talk to an HVAC professional.
Yeah, we are not professionals at this.
I don't know if he's going to attempt to build all this himself or whatever, but you really should talk to an HVAC professional. If you're going to do it yourself, that's fine. Just make sure the plans are properly approved. This needs permits. You have to get permits from the city, so at some point you're going to have to draw up plans and get them permitted. Maybe you were thinking you're going to do this without permits, but don't do it. It wouldn't be a good idea. So that's the caveat to that. But my thinking on this is the way a dead vent is intended to work is that it is an air exchange. It's just an active air exchange instead of a passive air exchange. So instead of just having an opening so that air can move from one room into another, you put a fan in there. And then if you're looking at the soundproofingcompany.com plans, they have this whole, double layered wall and everything that they're building around that fan that actually isn't totally necessary, right? If you don't really care what's in the adjacent room, if you don't care if the adjacent room is kind of noisy, you just have to make sure that the wall that is on the theater side is soundproof, and then you put the fan on the other side of that wall. That's all that you really need to worry about. So the way this would work conceptually is that you are conditioning the air of the bedroom that is next door to the theater, right? So to make it easier, let's just say you're talking about air conditioning, about making it cooler, right?
Yeah.
You would actively cool the bedroom. So you would have duct going from your AC unit into the bedroom. The bedroom gets cold. Cold air is being forced into the bedroom. Now, you can easily just have a passive vent that goes from the bedroom into the equipment rack, which is exactly what he's talking about. So that's fine. Cool air will move into the equipment rack. And then exhausting the hotter air out in the hallway is fine because it's got to get back into the mechanical room. It's got to get back to your furnace, back to your air conditioning unit. By code, the door to your mechanical room must be a louvered door. You're not allowed to have a solid door to your mechanical room. That must be a louvered door. So the air can get from the hallway back into the mechanical room. That's no problem. Yeah. So you have completed the circuit. You have forced air into the bedroom. It got pushed into the equipment rack, out of the equipment rack into the hallway, and from the hallway back into the mechanical room. You completed that circuit. Well, you just want to do the same thing to the theater, except now you're talking about using a fan on the other side of a soundproof wall instead of just an open grate, an open passive vent. That's all we're talking about. So again, you cool the bedroom. That cool air gets moved by the fan into your theater. And then you exhaust the hot air from the theater back into the hallway. And the hallway goes back into the mechanical room. You've completed that circuit as well. That's conceptually how this is supposed to work.
It seems like you could take that equipment rack room and extend that wall so that that little area to the right of the home theater there was like basically just like an air exchange room. You could do
so the
all
equipment
that.
Rack is like a super cold room that you can move air out of?
Well, no. I'm taking the room. He could make another room, just like another small room right next to it. You know what I'm saying? It'd be like you could call it a closet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it'd be a closet that he's solely using for air exchange.
Right.
You could put it behind doors and everything.
Almost like a staging room.
Yeah. Make that room be the super cold room or whatever it is.
So in other words, make the bedroom smaller overall.
But you're taking very little off of this bedroom. It's not like a lot.
Yeah.
And you could actually be another closet eventually. You could turn it into.
But you're literally just running an air conditioning duct into that extra room.
Yeah.
That's true.
Suggestion. All right.
But yeah, conceptually that's how it should work, but talk to an HVAC professional. You need plans and permits anyway, so.
On the topic of top front and top rear Atmos speakers, he likes that in his new plan you can have the wide seating area and the wider screen size that he initially wanted. He can make use of a Sierra 2 front speakers, wide horizontal dispersion. That's a lot of wide in one sentence. The new plan puts the front speakers 30 degrees to the left and right of dead center, but if he keeps the top front and the top rear speakers in line with the front and surround back speakers, as Dolby suggests, because of its low ceiling, there'll be more than a 30-degree angle to the sides of the primary seats. We're talking about using we talked about using the Sens HTM 200 SE speakers and keeping the seats within their 60-degree cone. But it seems like this would be a challenge in the setup. Also, with the low ceilings, it just seems better to use in-ceiling speakers that can mostly be housed in between ceiling joints rather than hanging down. Would we agree? If so, what are some good in-ceiling speakers to match the Sens? front and surround speakers. First of all, dude, do not get locked into what Dolby says. Dolby changes their stupid minds all the time. You can cheat those things in a little bit. Nobody's going to think you're a terrible person. And not only that, it's going to sound just fine. So I am still for the idea of putting in ceiling speakers. I think I've been for that this entire time. But if you really are, want to use these Ascend ones, there is no reason you can't just cheat them in a little bit. It's just so that you're still within that whatever cone that we talked about last week.
You can also aim them. They don't have to be pointing straight down if you're really worried about it. Remember, you got let's take your top front right speaker, right?
Yeah.
The way, even if he keeps it exactly where it is in this plan, you're allowed to angle it a little bit more towards the center and still have the very far right side of your seating be within the 30-degree angle to the right of that speaker, right? If it was aiming straight down, the cone of that sound would be dispersing beyond the right-hand edge of your seating area. So you could angle them in, or you could just physically move them closer together so that they're not perfectly in line with your front, left, right, and speakers. That's okay as well. Or I do kind of agree. Low ceiling, in-ceiling speakers make a heck of a lot of sense. I really don't disagree with you on that. So
yeah, there's lots of options out there. I mean, you're spending a lot of money on this, so I would definitely go with something that's quality. And RBH is my go-to.
Yep,
plays nice with everybody speaker, and they have lots of options and then lots of different price ranges. So that's what I'm going with.
And they have the nice back cans that are really easy to install and give you, because soundproofing, you said, big concern, soundproofing. So RBH has the back cans that'll, damp the sound traveling between your floors. I think that's a really good choice. Aperion would be a fine choice. They just don't have pre-made back cans. You could make your own rear enclosure for Aperion's in-ceiling speakers. Nice price in that. But RBH isn't so expensive that it'd be out. The sound quality, the neutrality of that will match extremely well with the neutrality of your Ascend speakers. And then they have the pre-made back cans that are super easy to install. So I agree. RBH is a great choice here. I will just say, if you want something that's small and easy to mount to your ceiling in case on-ceiling is still a consideration, the Focal Birds or the Focal Little Birds. Because these speakers are really close to you. The Focal Little Birds might be a really great choice here.
Yeah.
Super easy to mount to your ceiling, super easy to aim, really wide dispersion, so you really don't need to aim them because they're so small.
Okay, you can get the SVS elevation speakers with the angle.
Oh, the prime elevation speakers as well. Those hang down a fair amount, though. They're not that small.
No, I mean, they're the high side of them is pretty big, but he could keep them out wide.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be quite as bad. So I mean,
don't overlook the Focal Birds. Accessories for Less has them $100 a pop for the Little Birds. Pretty good choice.
All right, Rob. This is not you, different dude.
Yes,
Rob W. Rob is the fellow who had to give up his dedicated billiards room in favor of a kids' playroom. So now the pool table is sharing a space with his home theater. That's not good. Scrolling right now, he can hear conversations from the den above the theater room pretty clearly, and if his kids are running around upstairs, it's easily heard in the basement. He doesn't require dead silent soundproofing, and he's fine with some muffled sound transferring between rooms, but he wants to be able to watch a movie without it being so loud upstairs that he can't have a conversation in the den, and he doesn't want it to be shaking the whole house with bass or be too distracted by kids running around upstairs and making noise in the playroom next door. He's looked at the plans of the soundproofing companies, considered putting regular Roxol insulation in the walls and ceilings, adding some sound clips and hat channels, and using 2 layers of 5/8 inch drywall with green glue in between, all inside this theater. He's also thinking of making the double doors leading to the playroom solid core, since he already has hollow core doors right now with a 1/2 inch air gap underneath, and those barely muffle any noise from the playroom. So he wants to know, is all of this really necessary? He wants the right combination of effective but not overkill. Furthermore, some folks over at AVS, that den of that hive of villainy and deceit, have said that reducing footfall noise, i.e. his kids running around upstairs, is particularly difficult and really requires adding masks to the subfloor upstairs as well. So maybe these plans don't even go far enough. What's the right approach here? I'm going to agree to start off with the first thing I thought of is you just need to add some insulation to your walls and your ceilings in that home theater. Like that was the very first thing that came to my mind as something that you needed to do. You've got a lot of gaps in between this theater and all these other people's. Now, one of the problems is that this footfall noise is structural.
Yes.
That is going through the beams. It's going through everything that's attached to everything else.
And I'm guessing the floor upstairs is not full carpet, because you probably wouldn't have that issue. It's probably a hardwood floor or tile floor or linoleum floor, whatever it is. Probably hardwood. And that is a big part of it.
Yeah. So adding the physically detached wall, the hat channels, all that stuff, should make a pretty big difference, but you're still going to have gaps someplace, that you still run the risk of that, especially if you have a door next door that you're hearing a lot of stuff through. All these things that you're looking at will definitely help, but I would definitely start with adding some insulation to your ceilings and your floor, because it doesn't sound like he has any. If you're hearing conversations through the ceiling, that's not structural.
Correct.
That's just coming through the floor.
Yeah.
You've got to add insulation. You got to add mass there.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if he was talking about using all of the walls, as double walls on sound clips and hat channels, because certainly your exterior walls don't need that.
Right.
The wall that's being shared on the other side is the garage. That should be a very solid wall, because it has to be. Are you
seeing something I'm not seeing here? I don't. Oh, there it is. I scrolled past.
Yeah, the garage has to be a gas tight wall anyway, so that's probably already a really solid structure. So really, the only party wall that is of any concern is the one next to the playroom. So that if you're gonna do anything soundproofing wise on the walls, I really think you only need it to the party room on the play wall. I'm betting the vast majority of the sound that's getting from the playroom to the game room right now, to the theater room, is through the door. Right. So I'm betting that just the door will be enough, but I don't think you need to beef up even that party wall between the playroom and the theater room tremendously. I don't think you need to take down the existing drywall, put in clips and hat channels and all that. I think if you just put a second layer of drywall with green glue in between over the existing wall, that would totally damp the sound coming from the playroom. Plus, you put in the solid core doors. Yeah. I think it's mostly the doors. So really the concern is your ceiling. So my suggestion is for the walls, you don't need to do a whole lot. Maybe even start just by putting in the new doors and see how that does between the playroom and the theater, because that might be enough. I'm betting most of it is the doors between those two rooms. The upstairs,
I agree with that.
The upstairs stuff, you do need to make a significant change there, and that's a big deal. Redoing a ceiling, that is not a trivial thing. But unfortunately, that's the one you really need to address here. If you can address it from the top, pulling up whatever finished flooring you have up there, that is a way to come at this. But you do need some kind of decoupling going on here. That footfall noise is coming through the structure of your house. You need to decouple the top from the bottom. That's where your sound clips and hat channels are what you need. Muffling the conversation, like Tom just said, it sounds like you don't have insulation between your floors. That'll take care of a lot of that. So do you need to do all the steps? Insulation, clips and hat channels, and 2 layers of drywall with green glue. Well, if you did, it'd be very effective. Is it 100% necessary? Maybe the second layer of drywall and green glue isn't 100% necessary, because if you muffle the voices with the insulation and you decouple the ceiling with the clips and the hat channels, that is addressing the majority of what's bothering you. You said you don't need silence. If you wanted silence, you got to have the second layer of drywall and the green glue. But if you just want to
more than that too, you'd have to go around to your outlets, and there's a lot of other things.
Exactly. Yeah. Everywhere that the air could conceivably escape in any way.
We're not. I mean, what Rob is saying is true in that you would need that in order for silence, but you're not going to get silence just by doing the couple of things that you've mentioned here.
No.
You're going to need to do a lot more. So silence is.
Oh, it's hard.
It's very hard. It's very far away. What you're going to get is quiet, maybe.
Sure. But that's what he's after, right? He said he doesn't want to. It's fine if you can hear that there's a movie playing. He just doesn't want to be so loud that you can't hold a conversation. Fair enough, right? So I think but this means taking down your ceiling. It means taking down your existing ceiling.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do what you want to do. So that's the big project. Otherwise, the wall between the playroom and the game room, I would probably just start with replacing the door. I bet that's going to be enough.
Yeah, I'd like to replace my door too. Since he's been looking at soundproofing company plans, he's also considered their dead vent. We just talked about this for HVAC, but it does seem fairly complicated with the add cost while reducing space. If he just keeps the standard HVAC return and supply vents, will that significantly hurt his soundproofing efforts? Yeah, I mean, but you're not really trying to soundproof. You're trying to sound deaden, and I think that you don't have much. I wouldn't worry about this right now. That's not what I would do.
Well, one question would be, when you're hearing the voices coming from upstairs, when you're downstairs in what's going to be the theater room,
yeah,
is it noticeable, and you can test this out fairly easy, is it noticeable that those voices are coming from the vents?
Right.
Because sometimes it is. Sometimes that's exactly what's going on. They're coming from the vents. If that's the case, you have to somehow separate the vents that are from the top to the theater. You have to separate them somehow. You don't necessarily need to do a whole dead vent system. It could be as simple as putting a flexible duct somewhere in there instead of a hard duct. But that's still going to mean opening up your walls and addressing the ducting. But this is what you want to test. Now, if the sound is just, it's coming through the floor and it's not particularly coming through the vents, then maybe things will be okay. So you need to test this a little bit to see, is sound getting into and or out of your theater via the vents? You can test that right now.
I mean, a lot of people, I think, I don't hear sound coming out of my vents very often. And I think this dead vent thing, while it's very, like, I think it's mostly for people that are hearing HVAC noise. You know, their home theaters are close to their compressor or whatever it is, and it's pushing when the air kicks on. You can hear it. You can hear the thing working through the vents, and that's what for me. I think is a lot of, like, my home theater is as far away as anything is my house from my AC unit. Right. And my AC just kicked on just now. I know it because I can feel it. I never hear it. I never hear it. But there's a flexible vent. I know there's flexible duct work in, I mean, the inside the soffit that's up there. I know it's there. I can almost never hear anything. So I completely agree with Rob that it just putting in like soft ductwork there will make pretty big difference.
Yeah, because like in my parents' house, the upstairs living room and the downstairs rec room share an air return.
Oh,
so
right.
if you put your if someone talks into that air return upstairs, you can like have that conversation between the two floors via the air return. So if that's this, and you can test this out with your existing, you don't have to open anything up. You can test it out. If that's what's going on, then that needs to be addressed in some way. But test it out because you want to know before you start opening walls up.
And the very back of the room has a bit of a nook, and he's planning on putting all of his home theater equipment back there, but doing so would mean a very long HDMI cable, like over 35 feet, to reach his TV at the front of the room. So should he move his equipment, or is it an HDMI cable that can handle this length and still deliver 18 gigabits per second? Isn't the red mirror stuff can do this, right?
Not the red mirror. If you're willing to pay $160, the optical.
That's the one. That's the one I was talking about.
Optical HDMI.
Is that not called red mirror?
No, the red mirror. The red mirror is the power enhanced copper cable where they have like an actual plug. Like it
right.
Power.
Okay, I was thinking. I thought this was the optical cable. I thought red mirror was optical.
No, that's not the name. But Monoprice sells an optical HDMI cable. You can go all the way up to like 330 feet with that, but you can get a 50-foot one for about $160. Yes, that's an expensive HDMI cable, but it lets you do what you want to do, and it's not so expensive that it's outlandish.
Expensive. Yeah.
So, that'll work.
God, there's so many questions, dude. It's 11 o'clock. As a reminder, he wanted the whole house audio in 4 other rooms. He was planning on using his Chromecast audio as the sources, and we suggested using a Dayton distribution amp with outdoor speaker, depot, or monoprice caliber in-ceiling speakers. But how does he control the volume in each room? The link we provided for the Dayton distribution amps has a few different products, including a 6-source, 6-zone system that includes keypads for each room. Monoprice offers a similar system at lower price. Does he need this type of system with included keypads? And if so, how are those keypads wired? I don't have a clue about this one, so go ahead.
So, as far as I know, when you cast something to your Chromecast audio, you should be able to control the volume on the Chromecast audio.
Yeah.
So that is how you would control the volume for whatever room the Chromecast audio is going to. You just control the volume of the Chromecast audio, which means all you need is a dumb amplifier. That's all you need. The volume is going to be controlled app-wise through your smartphone. You're changing the volume on the Chromecast audio. That's my understanding. That was my intention of suggesting one of the Dayton distribution amps. I wasn't meaning this kit that they give you with wall plates and everything, which is only 25 watts per channel anyway. The monoprice one is also 25 watts per channel. I was talking about one of their 40 or 60 watt 12 channel distribution amps.
Right.
Just
So the
connecting
input itself is the source is going to be changing.
The
volume.
source. Yeah, the Chromecast
It's
audio
just
is going to
amp,
be changing.
and that's how it basically works, anyways. Most cases.
Now, if you wanted to get the wall plate so that you don't have to carry your phone around to change the volume, and you could just do it on a wall plate, those are just connected with an Ethernet cable. It's an Ethernet cable that runs from the wall plate back to that distribution amp, and then you're still just running speaker wire from the binding posts of the distribution amp up to your speakers.
You know why they use that cable? Because it's freaking cheap.
Cheap and easy.
It is easy to terminate. I mean, you can terminate it. You can buy a little kit, and they have a little tool and everything. I've done that dozens of times, and it's easy, and it's cheap as chips to terminate. So, yeah, you don't need all that. You just the Chromecast and the sources, and you're good to go. Let's see if we can get through one or two more here.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get to at least 8.
We'll see. Nathan on Facebook. Nathan is trying to fit an AV receiver into a bit of a tight space, and the Marantz Slimline receivers look like a great option for him. He's noticed that they have 2 subwoofer outputs, but do they allow him to set a separate distance and level for each of the 2 subs? Now, I wish he had told me which Slimline he was looking at, because
well, it also doesn't matter.
I thought that some of the older ones were dual mono. But
nope.
Anyways, so the answer is yes. Go on.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
No, it's basically just an internal Y splitter. That's all that's going on.
Oh, that's why I
here.
said dual mono.
Okay.
Isn't that dual mono?
Well, he's asking, can he set a separate distance and a separate level for each of the 2 subs?
Right.
No.
Yeah, I thought the new ones were going to be able to set 2 different stuff. No,
The
brand new ones that just came out.
Brand new Slimlines don't do that. No, because they're still multi EQ. That's all there. So since Marantz uses Odyssey, the level that you're looking for, what you're really looking for is sub EQHT. That's the thing that gives you independent distances and levels for the 2 subwoofers is sub EQHT. Now, so far, sub EQHT has only been found alongside Mult EQ XT32. The highest level of Odyssey room correction. So far, that's the only thing that's had sub EQHT paired with it. So the Marantz Slimlines, all of them use the regular Mult EQ. None of them have sub EQHT. So even though they have 2 subwoofer plugs, those are mono plugs. That is one distance setting and one level shared between those 2 plugs. Just think of it as an internal Y splitter. That's all it is.
Now, I got to be honest with you. How much difference is there going to be between the distance of your 2 subs that you're planning on using with this thing? I mean, because if the distance is negligible, and remember, these are very long wavelengths, maybe it doesn't matter that much. You can set the volumes yourself using the volume knobs on the back.
Yeah.
So you can do that part of it. You can level match them even without having an SPL meter. You can level match them yourself using the volume knobs in the back. If the distances are wildly different, well, then okay, this is a concern.
If you have variable phase knobs on the backs of your subs, you can compensate that way.
You can compensate that way.
Not all subs have fully variable phase knobs. A lot of them only have
if one sub is
switch.
5.5 feet away and one sub is 6 feet away,
then don't worry too much.
Who cares? I mean, I'll tell you what. Every time you run Odyssey, it's going to give you a slightly different number, anyways. Yeah. So whatever. I wouldn't worry too much about this. I am shocked that they don't have individual sub inputs on the most recent one. I thought for sure they would. I didn't even look it up. That's why when you said no, it's all been the same. I thought, oh, it must be yes then.
Why sub EQHT was kind of a big deal when it finally arrived.
Damon. We haven't heard from Damon for a while. He's been very busy. He took a forced break from listening to lots of podcasts, but now he's back and he's got a new dedicated 17 by 27 by 9 foot theater. It's 4,100 cubic feet. You go, boy. Or girl. I'm not going to
Those are super nice dimensions.
Yeah.
Really nice.
he is keeping his Klipsch Palladium front speakers, Klipsch GHX surrounds, Argon 5-channel amp, and an SACD player, and a 106-inch projection screen. But he's looking to make some upgrades. His top priority is new projector. He sits 14 feet away from his 106-inch screen, so he's convinced that 4K is worth the price. In his case, he really wants low fan noise, really low input lag for gaming. He's sensitive to DLP rainbows, so he typically avoids DLP projectors. He's considering the Epson 3900, ooh, that'd be bright, and the Sony exactly HW45. The $2,000 price points on those are attractive, but should he be considering any others? I wouldn't consider the Epson. I mean, no offense, but I mean, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need its light output for a 106-inch screen,
no,
and it's louder.
Okay, let's just go 14 feet from a 106-inch screen. You totally don't need 4K. Okay,
No.
like not even a little bit.
No,
okay,
I mean,
so.
if you want to keep the price to 2,000 or under, the HW45 from Sony, fantastic choice. 22 milliseconds of input lag. It's about as low as any display gets.
Yeah, there you go.
So that fantastic choice. I'll just mention, because Ultra HD Blu-rays are out there, because high dynamic range is out there. If you want to consider it, I mean, in your case, I'd probably point you at a JVC. Now that's $4,000, is doubling your price point to get with the new X570, also known as the RS420 if you're looking at the Pro version. But the X570, I mean, it's a super nice projector, and JVC just put in this year for these new models, the X570, 770, and 970, a low input lag mode. Now, I believe that one measured around 32 milliseconds or so, but that's still very, very good.
Right.
Much better than previously. If you want to double it, that means the better black levels of the JVCs, the better contrast. The Wobble K version of 4K is not really, it's 1080p panel, but being wobbled. But mostly it's the HDR support. That would be the thing you're getting. So if you're going to upgrade and you want to kind of go whole hog, then that's out there. It's out there, but it's double the price you were looking at. The HW45, great choice if you're just sticking with 1080p.
All right, his Integra Pre-Pro is getting older now. A big concern for him is noise floor because his Klipsch Palladium speakers are so efficient, even a tiny hiss is audible. You consider a new Pre-Pro in the $1,000 to $2,000 price range. There's anything right now that's so awesome, he simply must buy it. Well, nothing's ever that awesome.
Now, I mean, given this room size,
yeah,
are you thinking Atmos? I mean, he doesn't have a whole whack of extra speakers. This would be a big upgrade to add all the extra speakers to expand to Atmos. But
well,
I mean that would be the reason.
Marantz is about to come out with a brand new Pre-Pro, right?
Yeah, well, not a new flagship just yet, but a 7704 is on the way.
Right.
Which doesn't look like it's really doing much different from the 7703, which is already available now.
Exactly my point, right? 7704 comes out.
7703 drops in price.
Drops in price. Accessories for less. Dirt cheap.
Even if it doesn't get Dolby Vision, Damon doesn't care because he's using a projector, and there are no Dolby Vision projectors, so that isn't a concern
if I was
at
Damon,
all.
That's what I'd be keeping my eyes on right now. I gotta be honest with you. With that new Marantz coming out, that's what I'd be keeping my eyes on.
Yeah. So if you're set on Pre-Pro only, but I'm like, if you're considering doing Atmos, why not get an AV receiver? You already have a 5-channel external amp.
Yeah.
So you could drive the remainder of your Atmos setup, your surround backs and your 2 overhead speakers easily with an AV receiver.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? So maybe you look at I mean, the 6010 right now is $900 from accessories for less.
Yeah.
Under his $1,000 budget. Now, it doesn't have the nice front display. It can't be upgraded to Oro 3D. It doesn't have HEOS. But if you don't care about any of those things, it can power 11 speakers. Well, it can power 9 itself, but it can process 11, and you have an external 5-channel amp already. That's the value choice. There's the AVR X4300 H from Denon out there, $1,100 right now from accessories for less. You can get HEOS and Oro 3D with that one if you want it. Or you could go to the Marantz SR7011.
So, I mean, he's worried about hiss, but he's sitting a minimum of 14 feet from his front speakers, at least, right?
Well, they could be closer because maybe he's not. That's screen, so it's.
I know.
So maybe the speakers are a little bit closer.
That. I mean, if you're,
but I mean, he's still going to be driving the front speakers with his Aragon amp, I'm sure.
Right. I'm sure.
I mean, it's mostly the amp that's going to get you your noise floor.
That's right.
Mostly. So, if the speakers you already have
He
are
has noisy
fine,
outputs on his receiver. That would be an issue.
I suppose.
That's one of the things I would be concerned
I
about.
wouldn't be concerned about the pre-outs of a Marantz receiver, though. Those
I
are
would not
excellent
either.
quality pre-outs.
No, I
Excellent
wouldn't either.
quality.
Okay.
So,
just letting him know that we are considering that when we make our
yeah.
recommendations.
Now, I'm sure somebody's going to say he ought to be looking at the Emotiva XMC1. First of all, it's $2,500.
Nope.
So it's over his $2,000 range. Perfectly fine receiver. They still haven't released the update to add DTS-X. They've been promising that for months and months and months. Still, it's Emotiva. They promise stuff. It comes 3 years later.
Yeah. It'll get there.
But we're basically saying, look at Marantz.
So he's been using his PS4 as his Blu-ray player. It's a little bit noisy, and controlling it isn't quite as easy as a regular player. He's a cord cutter, so Netflix and PS View are important services to him. It'd be nice if a standalone player could deliver those sources, though not totally necessary. So what's a good Blu-ray player for him to consider? Now, first of all, I saw a video the other day of people who are repairing PS4s and all of the cockroaches that go to live in PS4s. Have you seen that video?
I haven't.
It is awful. They apparently, the vents are just the right size to let them in, and they go in there and they die, and they get
warm.
cooked.
It's warm in there.
It's
so
warm,
like
and they live on the boards, and then the thing breaks down, and people think there's something wrong with it. They go up, and they're just like bags of dead roaches that they scrape off these things and put in there. I am never owning a PS4. I am sorry, it terrified me. That is so gross. This is Florida. We got the big roaches. Anyways, you should buy a Sony because Sony Blu-ray players are the way to go for you, because everything does Netflix. Everything does Netflix.
Well, except for the Oppo 203 doesn't do any streaming whatsoever, so don't get that one.
Right. And the thing is the PS View. I mean, if you've already bought content for the PS View, then I don't see how you would go away from it. Plus cockroaches.
Along the lines of all of this, maybe you'll go 4K HDR stuff, Atmos, all that. Sony does have a UBP X800 Ultra HD Blu-ray player. It's actually been discounted now to $270, so the price isn't insane for an Ultra HD Blu-ray player. It's really quite nice. Doesn't do Dolby Vision, but who cares, because you've got a projector, and no projectors do Dolby Vision, so perfectly fine HDR10 only, going to projector. And it's also really, really good as an Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Now, it has Netflix built in. It doesn't seem to have PlayStation View yet.
How can it not have PlayStation? Oh, whatever.
I mean, if anything's going to have PlayStation View, it's clearly going to be a Sony player.
Right.
But yeah, for whatever reason, their Ultra HD Blu-ray player doesn't seem to. But he actually mentioned in his email he's got a SACD player. This Sony plays SACDs. So you could kill several devices with
devices with one.
And it would be an Ultra HD Blu-ray player. So, there's that.
So he's debating what to do when it comes to subs. The SVS PB16 Ultra has caused attention, but the price and size would mean only having one of them. You go for two small PB12 Plus.
Small PB12 Pluses.
Small. Huh? Instead, but would they deliver the same spine-crushing bass as a PB16 Ultra in this room size?
So 4,100 cubic feet. That is by Audioholic standards a large room, but not a, what do they call it? Extreme room is over 5,000 cubic feet.
Yeah.
I mean, PB12 pluses would be absolutely fine in 4,100 cubic feet.
I kind of feel like if you should be going with cylinders, though, don't you think?
Sure, PC13 Ultras, which aren't drastically more expensive than PB12 pluses.
Yeah. I kind of feel like if floor space, you do not know how big a PB12 Plus is. If you said small, then you clearly have no idea. You did not build the box. We said build the box. Build the box. Take cardboard, build a box. Don't measure it on the floor. Don't put tape down. Build a box. I think those things weigh over 100 pounds, man.
I mean, he could very well have the room for it. He's got a fairly large room, so it's not like
get some cylinder subs, and they're small. They're tall,
or I mean PC12 pluses too. I mean, you don't have to go to the ultras.
You don't even have to go to the ultras. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, the 12 pluses are less expensive than the PB.
Yeah.
So a pair of those. I mean, this is us. This is AV Rant. We want you to get a pair of subs.
Yeah.
We don't want you to get one sub. I mean, 17 by 27. I can't imagine you only have one seat. You could very well have only one seat that you really care about, because maybe you're the only person in your household who cares. That's entirely possible. But even so, dual subs, man. Dual subs. Now I got to say, PC12 Plus, it's not going to get down to what is the PB16? What is it, 12 hertz at 110 decibels or something? I mean, I must admit it can't do that. Okay, you got me. It's true. It can only go down to 16 hertz at 108 decibels. Okay, that's all it can do.
Oh, you will not miss the things that you cannot hear. You can only.
I really think duals are the way to go. I think the pluses are
especially
absolutely
the size
fine for your room size. Absolutely fine.
I agree.
I have to tell you to go that direction.
Infinite Gary. As Gary continues to listen and evaluate his Atmos speaker setup in his itty-bitty bedroom, it seems to him that whenever he uses a DTS Neural X up mixer, he gets stronger bass and more noticeably individual sounds from his surround and surround back speakers as compared to listening to the same soundtrack with a Dolby Surround up mixer. Have we noticed the same thing?
Yes.
I have not, but I would guess that if you had asked me on a test to tell you what I thought I would expect to hear from anything that said DTS on it, more bass would have been answer A, because they have historically always goosed the bass in all of their surround up mixing things. So not a shock there, Gary.
Nope. I mean, I particularly noticed the overhead channels being louder. They're clearly louder than the Dolby Surround up mixer. And I really believe it's because they said, hey, you just added speakers to your ceiling. Wouldn't you like to notice them? So I'm pretty darn sure they're goosing them. Now, he made it clear. He's like, this is the individual sounds from the surround and the surround back speakers, not the overhead speakers. His are up firing. I can't say that stood out to me as much, but again, the bass definitely stronger. The individuality, particularly in my case of the overhead sounds, absolutely. Now, overall, I've preferred the Dolby Surround up mixer because I don't particularly want to have my attention drawn to those are supposed to create a dome of enveloping sound around me, and they're not supposed to make me turn my head and go, what just came from over there?
Right.
So that's my preference, but what you're describing, I would say, yes, that I've noticed largely the same thing.
All right.
That's not crazy.
That's going to be it for this week. Yeah. We've got Tate, Ted, and Chris for next week. We will deal with your questions then. We want to thank our listeners of the week, David, Chris, and Tate. Sorry, guys. Gave us money and we didn't answer your question.
But we will. It's not like we're going to ignore them for ages.
They went to www.avrant.com, clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and left us a PayPal donation. So thank you, David, Chris, and Tate.
Yeah, David, Chris, Tate, thank you all so much for those donations.
I also want to thank Monty for talking us to Oppo and Mark for mentioning us in his SVS featured article.
Yeah, Monty, Mark, thank you both so much for the support.
All right, I am extremely tired. So if you want to get your question answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. If you want all the other contact information, just rewind to the beginning of this podcast. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And so that I have an image on this, I'm Rob H. God, this really was a train wreck. Yeah. Now go out and listen to something.